The sky above Kesta 7 had always been a soft purple color. Governor Talus remembered the first time he saw it, nearly 40 years ago, when his people first came to this world. The Velori had built something beautiful here. Homes carved from the white crystal that grew from the ground, gardens filled with plants from their distant homeworld. Schools where children learned and laughed. 4,000 souls living in peace on a quiet mining colony at the edge of known space. Now that purple sky was burning orange with the fire, trails of descending warships. Talus stood at the window of his office, all four of his thin arms pressed against the glass. His blue skin had turned pale, almost gray from fear. He watched as the massive black ships came down through the clouds. There were 5 of them. Each one was bigger than his entire colony. Each one carried the mark of the Drekker Dominion. Slavers. The word alone made Talus want to collapse. The Drekker were nightmares made flesh. They stood 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in natural bone armor. They had 4 arms like the Valori, but where Valori arms were thin and delicate. Drekker arms ended in crushing claws that could tear through metal. They had conquered over 100 worlds. They took what they wanted. They took who they wanted, and now they had come to Kesta 7. Governor. His assistant, a young Valori named Polly, ran into the office. Her luminescent skin was flickering wildly with panic. The defense satellites are destroyed. All of them. We have no weapons. No ships. The nearest patrol fleet is 3 days away. Talus closed his eyes. 3 days. His people would be gone in 3 hours. Have they made contact? His voice was steady, though he felt anything but steady inside. Yes. They want all colonists to gather in the central plaza. Anyone who resists will be killed. Anyone who hides will be killed, they say. Polly's voice broke. They say we are now property of the Dominion. Property. Talise had heard stories about what happened to species taken by the Drekker. Worked to death in mines. Sold to other species for experiments. The lucky ones died fast. The unlucky ones wished they had. He turned away from the window and walked to his desk. There was a small panel hidden under the surface. A panel he had been told never to touch. A panel that connected to an ancient emergency beacon that all civilized species had agreed should never be used.
Gavver, what are you doing?
Polly asked. Something forbidden? Talus answered. He pressed his hand against the panel. It glowed under his touch, recognizing his authority. A small device rose from the desk. It was old, very old. Older than the colony, older than space travel, older than everything Talus understood about galactic civilization. That beacon, Polly whispered. That broadcasts towards Sector 9. Yes. But Sector 9 is the Forbidden Zone. That is where the Deathworlders live. The humans. Talus looked at his young assistant. I know. They say humans are monsters. They say their homeworld is a death trap. Poison air, crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, predators everywhere. They say the humans evolve through constant violence. They say humans are more dangerous than the Drekker. The Council banned all contact with them for a reason. I know all of this, Talus said quietly, but the Council is not here. The patrol fleet is not here. No one is here except the Drekker and my people. And I will not watch 4,000 Valori be dragged away in chains without trying everything. He activated the beacon. A simple message, broadcast on all frequencies, aimed at the darkness of Sector 9. This is Governor Talus of Valor. Mining Colony Kesta 7. We are under attack by Drekker slavers. We have no weapons. No defense. 4,000 civilians, including children. Please help us. Anyone who hears this, please? The beacon pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Then it went silent. Polly stared at him. What if the humans come? What if they are worse than the Drekker? Talise had no answer. He simply watched the sky burn and prayed he had not made a terrible mistake. 6 hours away? In the cold darkness of space, a ship drifted through an asteroid field. The UEN's Hammer of Dawn was not a large vessel by human standards. 200 meters long, angular, and dark, built for speed and violence. It carried a crew of 147 souls, plus a company of 24 Marines. It was on routine patrol, hunting pirates and protecting the scattered human colonies that had spread across this region of space. Captain Park Do-yeon sat in his command chair, reading reports on a tablet. He was 43 years old, with broad shoulders and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. A scar ran down his jaw from an old battle. His eyes were dark and cold, the eyes of a man who had seen too much death and learned to live with it. Captain Lieutenant Kim Yuna spoke from her station. She was younger than him, early 30s, with short black hair and a voice that never seemed to show emotion. "We are receiving an emergency broadcast. Origin point is outside our patrol zone." "Let me hear it," Do-yeon said. The message played through the bridge speakers. The alien voice was high and trembling with fear. Do-yeon listened to every word. When it finished, the bridge was silent. "Valor," Yuna said. "Soft species. No military capability. The colony registry shows 4,000 civilians, mostly miners and families, and the attackers, Drecker Dominion. Sensor records from the beacon show 1 battlecruiser and 4 escort ships, approximately 300 warriors." Do-yeon put down his tablet. "How long until they finish loading prisoners?" "Based on standard Drecker operations, 12 hours. Maybe less." "How long to reach the colony at maximum burn?" 6 hours. Do-yeon stood. He walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at the stars. The colony was outside his patrol zone. Going there would mean ignoring orders. Command would not be happy. There might be consequences. He thought about 4,000 people being dragged away in chains. He thought about children being sold. He thought about what it meant to hear someone cry for help and do nothing. "Set course for Kesta 7, he said. "Maximum burn." "Sir." The helmsman hesitated. "That is outside our authorized area. Command can court-martial me when we get back." Do-yeon turned to face his crew. "No one calls for help and gets silence. Not while I am captain of this ship. Are we clear?" The bridge crew looked at each other. Then, one by one, they nodded. YUNA opened a channel to the 2 escort frigates traveling with them. "Silent Fang, Pale Horse. This is Hammer of Dawn, new heading. We have a rescue mission." Commander Lee Jizu's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Dawn. We are with you." Commander Choi Hen followed a moment later. "Pale Horse ready. Let us go hunting." The 3 ships turned as one and screamed into hyperspace, leaving trails of light behind them. On the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, Captain Park Do-yeon sat back in his chair and began reviewing everything the database had on Drecker anatomy. 6 hours? He had 6 hours to plan how to kill 300 slavers with 171 humans. It would be enough. War Chief Gorath had conquered 17 worlds in his lifetime. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had risen through the ranks of the Drecker Dominion through blood and violence, earning his title by crushing anyone who stood in his way. He was 8 feet tall, covered in bone plates that could stop most weapons, and his forearms ended in claws that could tear a Valori in half with no effort at all, standing on the bridge of his battlecruiser. The crushing fist, he watched his warriors herd the colonists into containment pods with deep satisfaction. The Velour were perfect slaves. Weak, fragile, obedient when threatened. They would sell well on the markets of the inner systems. The young ones especially. Always demand for the young ones. "How many so far?" he asked his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Drax. 3,200. We will have the rest within 4 hours. Good. Gorath turned away from the viewing screen. Any response from their distress call? Nothing. The nearest patrol fleet is at least 2 days away. By then we will be long gone. Gorath made a sound that passed for laughter among his kind, a grinding noise like stones being crushed together. Pathetic creatures. No weapons, no ships, no soldiers. They spread across the stars like weeds, but they cannot even defend themselves. The galaxy belongs to the strong Drax. Never forget that. Yes, War Chief. Below them, on the surface of Kesta 7, the Valori colonists were being sorted. Warriors with shock sticks pushed them into lines. Families were separated. Parents screamed for their children. Children cried for their parents. The Drekker did not care. Cargo was cargo. Governor Tallis had been placed in a special containment field, reserved for leaders and officials who might be ransomed back to their governments. He stood alone inside the glowing barrier, watching his people suffer, feeling helpless and broken. The beacon had sent its message 6 hours ago. No one had come. Perhaps no one would come. Perhaps the humans had ignored the call. Or perhaps they simply did not care about the fate of 4,000. Belori, perhaps he had been a fool to hope. Then the sky changed. 3 bright points of light appeared above the colony, burning through the atmosphere at impossible speed. They came from nowhere, dropping out of hyperspace so close to the planet that it should have been impossible. Every species in the galaxy knew that you could not exit hyperspace inside a gravity well. The math did not work. The physics did not allow it. The humans had apparently not read those rules. Alarms screamed across the Drekker fleet. Gorith spun around to face his sensor officer, who was staring at his console with wide eyes. "Report," the war chief demanded. "3 contacts, sir." They appeared inside the gravity well. "I do not understand how." "They are small. 1 frigate class, 2 corvettes maybe. They are broadcasting no identification. Small ships? Only 3? Gorith felt his confusion turn to anger. Who dares attack the Drekker with 3 tiny ships? The communication console lit up. Someone was hailing them.
Put it through,
Gorith ordered. A voice filled the bridge, female, human, completely calm, as if she was discussing the weather rather than facing a battlecruiser that could destroy her ship in seconds. This is Lieutenant Kim Yuna of the United Earth Navy vessel Hammer of Dawn. You are currently engaged in illegal capture and enslavement of protected civilians. You have 12 minutes to release all prisoners, power down your weapons, and surrender your ships for boarding. This is your only warning. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your fleet. Silence fell across the bridge. Then Gorith began to laugh. The grinding sound echoed off the metal walls as his warriors joined in. 12 minutes? Drax asked, disbelief in his voice. 3 ships against 5? And they give us an ultimatum? Goroth shook his head. Humans. I have heard stories about these creatures. They call themselves Deathworlders, as if that means something. They think they are special because their homeworld is harsh. He stepped toward the communication console, his claws clicking against the floor. Open a channel. It's the connection established. Gorith spoke with all the authority of a conqueror. Unknown vessels, I am War Chief Gorith of the Drekker Dominion. We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed armies that numbered in the millions. You are 3 small ships with perhaps 200 crew. We have a battle cruiser and 4 escorts with over 300 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. You are not making demands. You are prey that has wandered into our hunting ground. He paused, expecting fear, expecting surrender, expecting the humans to realize their mistake and try to flee. Instead, a new voice answered. Male, this time. Deeper, just as calm, but with an edge of something that made Gorith's skin prickle. This is Captain Park Do-yoon. You misunderstand the situation, War Chief. We are not threatening you. Threats imply uncertainty about the outcome. I have no uncertainty. I am simply informing you, as a courtesy, of how you are going to die if you do not comply. Gorith felt something strange, something he had not felt in decades. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was doubt. Your arrogance will be your end, human, he growled. All batteries, target the lead ship. Destroy them. Crushing fist opened fire. Plasma cannons that had melted through fortress walls sent, blazing death toward the Hammer of Dawn. The 4 escort ships added their own weapons to the attack. The sky above Kesta 7th, filled with fire, and the human ships danced through it. They moved in ways that should have been impossible. They accelerated and decelerated at rates that would have crushed any normal crew into paste. They twisted and turned and spiraled through the plasma fire like the bolts were moving in slow motion. Not a single shot connected. On the surface, Governor Tallis watched through his containment field with his mouth hanging open. He had studied human technology. He knew they were advanced, but this was something else. This was a display of such perfect ship handling, such impossible coordination, that it looked more like art than combat. The three human ships split apart. One dove toward the battlecruiser. Two curved toward the escorts. They moved together, apart, and together again, always covering each other, always in motion. Then they fired back. Governor Talus had seen weapons fire before. He had seen Drekker plasma cannons and Valori defense lasers and all the standard weapons of galactic civilization. He had never seen anything like what the humans used. The first shot from the pale horse hit a Drekker escort ship in the engine section. It did not explode in fire. It simply came apart, metal and armor peeling away like the skin of a fruit, exposing the soft interior. The second shot finished it. The third and fourth shots killed the second escort before it could even begin evasive maneuvers. The Silent Fang targeted the battlecruiser's main engines. Its weapons were different, designed for precision rather than destruction. 3 shots, perfectly placed. And the crushing fist shuddered as its ability to flee died. The remaining 2 escort ships tried to run. The Hammer of Dawn did not let them. Captain Doyen's ship moved with terrifying precision, cutting off their escape routes, hurting them like animals. 2 more volleys. 2 more wrecks spinning into the void. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. On the bridge of the crushing fist, War Chief Goreth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 4 ships destroyed. His battlecruiser crippled. 3 human vessels circling him like predators around wounded prey. Impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. Communication console crackled. Captain Park Doyan's voice returned. You now have 8 minutes remaining, War Chief. Release the prisoners. Surrender your ship. Or we will come aboard and take them ourselves. I strongly suggest you choose the first option. We are much less patient in person. Gorath looked at his remaining warriors. He saw something in their eyes that he had never seen before. Fear. The Drekker had finally met something more dangerous than themselves. The galaxy had many dangerous worlds, planets with acid rain and poisonous atmospheres, moons covered in ice where temperatures dropped below anything that should support life, gas giants where the pressure could crush starships. The civilized species avoided these places. They built their colonies on gentle worlds with mild climates and stable conditions. Then there was Earth. Earth was not supposed to produce intelligent life. The mathematics of planetary development said it was impossible. The gravity was too strong. The atmosphere was too reactive, filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen that burned through organic matter over time. The temperature swings were extreme, from frozen wastelands to boiling deserts. The weather systems produced storms that could level cities. The oceans hid monsters of impossible size. The land was covered with predators and parasites and diseases that evolved constantly, always finding new ways to kill. Every species that studied Earth came to the same conclusion. Nothing should survive there. Nothing should evolve there. Certainly nothing should become intelligent there. The humans had apparently not received that message. They had not just survived Earth, they had conquered it. They had faced down every predator, every disease, every natural disaster their world could throw at them, and they had won. They had climbed to the top of the most dangerous food chain in known space through a combination of endurance, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. And then they had looked at the stars and said, more. Inside the Hammer of Dawn, Sergeant Bae Sujin stood before her Marine squad in the loading bay. She was small by human standards, barely 160 centimeters tall, with a lean body built for speed rather than strength. Her face was calm, almost peaceful, as she checked her weapon for the 5th time. Her soldiers knew that look. It meant violence was coming. Listen up, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the bay. We have a crippled battlecruiser with approximately 300 Drekker warriors between us and 4,000 civilians. The war chief has refused to surrender. So we are going to board the ship, kill anyone who gets in our way, and bring those people home. Questions? Private Han Min-jae raised his hand. He was young, 20 years old, on his first real combat deployment. He had trained for this moment for 3 years, but training and reality were different things. Sergeant, the Drekker have bone armor. They are 3 times our size. They have 4 arms. How do we fight that? Sujin smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You have been taught that size and strength matter in combat. Forget that. Size and strength matter in a contest between equals. The Drekker are not our equals. They evolved on a comfortable world with few predators. They think they are the top of the food chain because they have not met us yet. She pulled up a holographic display showing Drekker anatomy. The bone plates have gaps. Here, here, and here. The joints are weak. The eyes are sensitive to bright light. They have slow reflexes compared to us because their nervous systems developed without the pressure of fast predators. They rely on intimidation and brute force because that has always been enough. She turned off the display. It will not be enough today. Stay mobile. Stay coordinated. Work in teams. Use your grenades, your blades, whatever it takes. Every warrior that falls is one less between us and those civilians. Any more questions? Silence. Good. Board in 5 minutes. As the squad began final preparations, Private Han moved closer to another soldier, a veteran named Corporal Yoon Taiho. Taiho was in his 30s, with scars on his hands and a quiet manner that suggested he had seen combat before. Is it true what they say about the sergeant? Han asked quietly. That she killed a Drekker raider with her bare hands? Taiho nodded. The frontier incident 3 years ago. A Drekker boarding party took her ship. She was the only survivor. They found her standing over for dead raiders, covered in their blood. She had broken one's neck, crushed another's throat, and stabbed the other 2 with a piece of broken metal. Took her 2 hours to fight her way to the escape pod. Jan stared at the small woman checking her rifle across the bay. How is that possible? She is so small. That is what the Drekker thought too. Taiho began loading his own weapon. The galaxy does not understand what we are. Private. They see our size and think we are weak. They do not know that we hunted mammoths with sticks. They do not know that we crossed oceans in wooden boats. They do not know that we survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions of us. They do not know that we never ever give up. He slammed a magazine into his rifle with a satisfying click. The Drekker think they are predators. They are about to learn what a real predator looks like. On the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, Captain Park Do-yeon watched the crushing fist float dead in space. The battlecruiser was massive compared to his ship, bristling with weapons and armor. It should have been unbeatable. It should have crushed his tiny fleet without effort. But Do-yeon knew something that War Chief Goreth did not. He knew that combat was not about size or firepower. Combat was about will. It was about who wanted victory more. It was about who was willing to pay the price in blood and pain and sacrifice. The Drekker fought for profit, for slaves. For wealth, humans fought for something else. Something the galaxy had almost forgotten existed. Captain Lieutenant Kim Yuna reported from her station. Marine squad is ready for boarding. Enemy ship has powered down main weapons, but internal defenses are still active. I am reading approximately 260 heat signatures inside, and our civilians. Concentrated in the cargo bays. 4,000 life signs, all Valaway. They appear unharmed for now. Do-yeon nodded. Tell Sergeant Bay she is clear to proceed. Commander Lee, Commander Choi, maintain position and watch for any surprises. If anyone tries to run, disable them. If anyone tries to fight, end them. Understood, Captain. Both commanders responded. Do-yeon stood and walked to the viewing port. Below him, through the transparent barrier, he could see the Drekker battlecruiser. A massive beast of metal and armor, filled with warriors who thought themselves invincible. He had read the reports on Drekker culture. They valued strength above all else. They believed the strong had the right to take from the weak. They saw other species as resources to be harvested, not people to be respected. They had built their entire civilization on the backs of slaves. Do-yeon had no mercy for slavers. His grandfather had been born in a time when humans still practiced slavery. His grandmother had told him stories about the wars fought to end it. The blood spilled to establish a simple truth that every human now accepted as fundamental. No person was property. No life was less valuable than another. Every soul deserved freedom. The Drekker had not learned this lesson. They were about to receive a very harsh education. Marines are away, Yuna announced. Do-Yan watched the small boarding craft detach from his ship and burn toward the crushing fist. 24 humans against 260 Drekker. The numbers should have been laughable. They should have been suicide. But Do-Yan had studied history. He knew about the 300 Spartans who held a pass against an empire. He knew about the Marines at Chosen who fought through 7 divisions of enemy soldiers in frozen mountains. He knew about the defenders of Rorke's Drift, who held against 4,000 warriors with barely 100 men. Humans had always been outnumbered. It had never stopped them. The boarding craft reached the battlecruiser and locked onto the hull. Cutting lasers began burning through the armor. In minutes, Sergeant Bay and her squad would be inside, in the cargo bays of the crushing fist. 4,000 Velori waited in terror, not knowing that their salvation was coming in the form of 24 small, fragile-looking creatures from a death world they had been taught to fear. They would learn that sometimes the monsters were on your side. The cutting laser finished its work, and a section of the crushing fist's hull fell inward with a heavy clang. Before it had even hit the floor, Sergeant Bae-Sujin was through the hole, her rifle up and scanning for threats. Behind her, 23 Marines flowed into the enemy ship like water through a broken dam. The corridor was dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in a bloody red glow. The air smelled like oil and something else, something organic and unpleasant. Drekker ships were not built for comfort. They were built for war. First team with me, Bay ordered quietly. Second team, secure the corridor and watch our backs. Third team, find a terminal and get me a map to the cargo bays. Move. The squad split with practiced efficiency. Corporal Yoon Tai-ho led second team to defensive positions, while Private Han Min-jae followed Sergeant Bay deeper into the ship. Every step was careful, measured, silent. The humans moved through the shadows like ghosts. They encountered their first Drekker. Within 30 seconds, the warrior came around a corner without warning. 8 feet of bone-armored muscle carrying a massive plasma rifle. It saw the humans and froze for a single moment, its brain trying to process what it was seeing. Small creatures, fragile-looking, holding weapons that seemed like toys. Compared to Drekker arms, that moment of hesitation costed everything. Bay fired 3 times. The first shot hit the gap between the warrior's chest plates. The second punched through its throat. The third went through its left eye. The Drekker collapsed before it could even raise its weapon. "Contact down," Bay said calmly. "Keep moving." Private Han stared at the body as they passed it. The warrior was massive, terrifying even in death. Its claws could have torn him apart with a single swing, but it had died in less than 2 seconds, killed by a woman half its size. "Focus, Private," Corporal Yoon said from behind him. "There are plenty more where that one came from." They were right. The Drekker responded to the intrusion within minutes. Warriors poured into the corridors from all directions, roaring challenges and firing their plasma weapons. The ship filled with the sounds of battle, but the humans did not fight like the Drekker expected. They did not stand in the open and trade fire. They did not try to match strength against strength. Instead, they used the ship against its owners. They moved through maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts. They set ambushes at corridor intersections. They attacked from unexpected angles, killed quickly, cut, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Drekker were hunters. They were used to chasing prey, cornering it, overpowering it with superior force. They had no experience fighting something that hunted them back. In Cargo Bay 3, a group of 15 Drekker warriors had gathered to defend the prisoners. They formed a wall of bone and muscle, their weapons aimed at the only entrance. Certain that any attacker would have to come through that door. The humans came through the ceiling. Corporal Yoon's team had cut through the deck. above and dropped in behind the defenders. Grenades hit the floor before the Drekker could react. The explosions were precisely calibrated, strong enough to shatter bone plates, but not strong enough to harm the Velory prisoners huddled against the far wall. When the smoke cleared, 12 Drekker were dead. The remaining 3 turned to face their attackers and found themselves staring down the barrels of human rifles. "Surrender," Yoon said. The Drekker charged instead. They died on their feet, which was perhaps more mercy than they deserved. In another section of the ship, Private Han found himself separated from his squad during a chaotic firefight. He ducked into a storage room to reload his weapon and found that he was not alone. A Drekker warrior stood in the corner, its armor cracked and one arm hanging limp from an earlier wound. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then the Drekker lunged. It was fast, despite its injuries, crossing the room in 2 massive strides. Han barely had time to raise his rifle before a claw swept it from his hands. He threw himself sideways as another claw slashed through the space where his head had been. The warrior was bigger, stronger, desperate. But Han had trained for 3 years under instructors who believed that survival was the only thing that mattered. He had learned to fight dirty when fighting fair meant dying. He rolled under a sweeping blow and drove, his combat knife into the gap behind the Drekker's knee. The warrior screamed and stumbled. Han scrambled up its back like a climbing animal, wrapped his arms around its throat, squeezed with everything he had. The Drekker thrashed and spun, trying to shake him off. It slammed its back against the wall, crushing Han between its armor and the metal surface. Pain exploded through his body. Something cracked in his ribs. He held on anyway. 30 seconds. That was how long it took for a Drekker to lose consciousness, from lack of blood to the brain. Han had memorized that number during training. He had never expected to test it. At 28 seconds, the warrior collapsed. Han released his grip and fell to the floor, gasping for breath. His ribs were screaming. His vision was blurred. But the Drekker was not moving. He had one. Sergeant Bay found him 2 minutes later, sitting against the wall with the unconscious warrior at his feet and a slightly dazed expression on his face. "Right. Private," she said. "Are you injured?" "Ribs," Han managed. "Maybe broken. I think I killed it." Bay knelt beside the Drekker and checked its pulse. Not dead. Unconscious. But that works too. She looked at Han with something that might have been approval. "Good work, soldier. Can you walk?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Then walk. We still have prisoners to rescue." By the time the boarding action reached its 47th minute, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The humans had swept through the crushing fist with brutal efficiency, clearing corridor after corridor, deck after deck. The Drekker had fought hard. They had been outmaneuvered and outfought at every turn. Sergeant Bay led her squad into the main cargo bay, where the bulk of the prisoners were being held. 3,000 Velory looked up at the sound of the door opening, their faces showing a mixture of terror and desperate hope. Bay stepped forward. Her armor was scorched and dented. There was purple Drekker blood on her hands and face. Behind her, her Marines looked like warriors from some ancient nightmare. But her voice was gentle when she spoke. "My name is Sergeant Bae Soo-jin of the United Earth Navy. You are safe now. We are here to take you home." As an elderly Velory pushed through the crowd. Governor Tallis had been released from his containment field when the humans captured the guards. His luminescent skin was dim with exhaustion and fear, but his eyes were clear. "You came," he said. "You actually came." "Someone called for help," Bay replied. "That is all that matters." "But why?" Tallis could not understand. "We are strangers to you. We are nothing. Why would you risk your lives for us?" Bay looked at him for a long moment. Behind her, Private Han and Corporal Yoon and 20 other humans stood silent, waiting. They were all tired. Several were injured. 2 had died in the fighting, their bodies being carried by their comrades. "'Cause Bay said finally, "Where we come from, you do not ignore someone crying for help. You do not walk past suffering if you can do something about it. You do not let slavers take innocent people without a fight." She paused. "We are not monsters, Governor. We are humans. And this is what humans do. Talus felt something he had not felt since the Drekker ships first appeared in his sky. Hope. War Chief Gorath had retreated to the bridge of his ship when the battle turned against him. He had watched his warriors die through the security feeds, unable to believe what he was seeing. The humans moved through his ship like a disease, killing everything in their path. They were faster than they should be, smarter than they should be, more vicious than they should be, and there were so few of them. That was the worst part. 300 Drekker warriors, the finest the Dominion had produced, being slaughtered by 24 small creatures from a death world on the edge of the galaxy. Now, Gorath stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his personal guards. The doors had been sealed. The remaining warriors had been told to hold the corridors. But Gorath knew it would not be enough. Nothing was enough. The cutting laser began its work on the bridge doors. Gorath picked up his plasma pistol, a massive weapon that could punch through armor at close range. He checked the power cell. Fully charged. Enough for 50 shots. The door fell inward. Captain Park Doyen stepped through the opening first, his own weapon raised. Behind him came 4 Marines, their rifles tracking every corner of the bridge. They moved with the careful precision of predators. Entering a cornered enemy's lair, Doyen stopped 10 meters from the war chief. The two commanders studied each other in silence. "So this is the human captain," Gorath said. His voice was steady, despite the situation. He was going to die. He had accepted that. But he would not die like a coward. "You are smaller than I expected. All of you are. Size is not everything, War Chief. As you have learned today," Gorath made a grinding sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "Indeed, your kind have killed 247 of my warriors. You have taken my ship. You have destroyed my fleet." He raised his plasma pistol, pointing it at Doyen's chest. "But you have not taken my honor. I am War Chief Gorath. I have conquered 17 worlds. I do not surrender." Dojan did not flinch. His weapon remained pointed at the Drekker's head. "I am not asking you to surrender, War Chief. I stopped asking 45 minutes ago. Then what do you want?" "I want you to understand something before you die." Doyen took a step forward. His dark eyes were cold, without mercy or hesitation. "Your people have been raiding and enslaving species across this sector for decades. You think you are predators? You think you are the top of the food chain?" "We are," Gorath growled. "We have crushed every enemy we have faced." "You had not faced us." Gorath's claw tightened on his weapon. "And what are you? Small creatures from a poisonous rock at the edge of nowhere? Your ships are tiny. Your bodies are fragile. Your numbers are nothing compared to the Dominion. Send your thousands human. We have millions." Doyen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Do you know why we call our homeworld a death world, War Chief? It is not because we are exaggerating. It is because every single thing on that planet tried to kill us. The predators hunted us. The weather froze us and burned us. The diseases infected us. The plants poisoned us. The insects carried plagues. The seas drowned us. The mountains crushed us." He took another step forward. Gorath found himself taking a step back. "And we survived. Not because we were the strongest. Not because we were the biggest. We survived because we refused to stop. We survived because when something knocked us down, we got back up. When something killed our friends and families, we hunted it until it was extinct. When our planet tried to destroy us, we conquered it instead." Gorath's back touched the wall. "So yes, send your millions. Send your entire Dominion. Every time someone calls for help, we will answer. Every time slavers take innocent people, we will hunt them down. Every time a bully thinks they can prey on the weak, they will find humans standing in their way." Doyen raised his weapon to point directly between Gorath's eyes. "Your people have taken slaves. You have killed innocents. You have caused suffering across 100 worlds. There is no prison that will hold you. There is no court that will judge you fairly. There is only this moment and what comes after." "What comes after?" Gorath asked. "Justice." The shot echoed through the bridge. War Chief Gorath, conqueror of 17 worlds, slid down the wall and did not move again. 3 weeks later, Governor Talos stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was massive, filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds. Every species with a voice in galactic affairs had sent someone to hear the testimony of the Valor. Governor who had done the unthinkable. He had called the Deathworlders. And they had answered. "I stand before you today because of the humans," Talos began. His voice was clear now, strong in a way it had not been since before the attack. 3 ships against a battle group. 24 soldiers against 300. They came without hesitation when they received our distress call. They fought without fear. They bled for us. Some of them died for us, and we were strangers to them. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species he had been taught to respect. Species that had refused to help, species that had followed the Council's ban on contact with humans without question. The Council calls them Deathworlders. You have taught us to fear them, to avoid them, to treat them as dangerous monsters from a forbidden sector of space. Talos straightened, all 4 of his arms spread wide. I am glad I did not listen to your warnings, because when the darkness came for my people, those monsters answered. They answered without mercy for the slavers who would have taken us, and they showed more compassion for 4,000 strangers than any civilized species in this chamber has ever shown. The chamber was silent, uncomfortable. Many representatives looked away. The Drekker Dominion has sent a message. To the human government, Talos continued. They have promised revenge. They have threatened to bring their entire fleet against human space. They call the humans a threat that must be eliminated. He paused. I have a different view. The humans are not a threat to civilized species. They are a threat to those who prey on the weak. They are a threat to slavers and conquerors and anyone who believes that might makes right. And that, honored representatives, is not something to fear. That is something to hope for. Talos stepped back from the speaking platform. I came here to testify. I have done so. What the Council does with this information is your choice. But I want you to remember something. Somewhere out there, right now, another colony is calling for help. Another species is being attacked by those stronger than themselves. Another group of innocents is praying that someone will save them. He turned to leave, then looked back over his shoulder. And somewhere out there, a human ship is changing course to answer that call. Because that is what they do. That is who they are. And maybe, if we are very lucky, we can learn to be a little bit more like them. In the deep darkness of space, far from the Galactic Council and its debates, the UEN's Hammer of Dawn drifted through the void. The ship had been repaired after the battle. The 2 Marines who had died were buried with full honors on Kesta 7. Their graves marked by simple stones that looked out over the purple sky. Captain Park Do-Yan sat in his command chair, reading a new distress call on his tablet. A mining outpost at the edge of unexplored territory. Unknown attackers. Hundreds of workers calling for anyone who could hear them. Lieutenant Kim Yuna watched him from her station. Captain, orders. Do-Yan looked up from the tablet. Through the viewing port, he could see the stars stretching out to infinity. Somewhere out there, more people needed help. More predators needed to be taught that the galaxy was no longer theirs to hunt. Set course for the outpost, he said quietly. Maximum burn. Someone needs help. The Hammer of Dawn turned toward the new heading. Behind it, the Silent Fang and the Pale Horse followed without question. 3 small ships carrying less than 200 humans, ready to face whatever was waiting for them. On worlds across the galaxy, species who had heard Governor Talos's testimony began to look at the stars differently. The forbidden sector was not so forbidden anymore. The monsters were not really monsters. The Deathworlders were something else entirely. They were hope, and they would answer every call.